أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين صلوا على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل مؤمنين مؤمنات brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman Salamun alaykum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Everything that we've discussed up until now has to be fully understood and comprehended. Sometimes, whenever we have these discussions about theological or philosophical and religious issues, we hear proofs, we hear arguments, and it sounds nice, but it doesn't really fully sit with us, right? But if it doesn't fully sit with you, and then you try to go and move forward to more complicated, more in-depth discussions, then you're going to lose it, right? Think about any other science. In mathematics, right, you have a series of initial premises and propositions. Until you prove those first and understand those, anything else going forward won't make sense, right? And even just science as a whole, right? You start with very simple ideas. If somebody doesn't even believe that numbers have values, for example, like 1 through whatever, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. If you don't believe in like the existence of numbers, algebra is not going to make sense to you, right? So as you go to higher sciences, as you go to something deeper, more abstract, you have to make sure that those fundamental bases, fundamental propositions and premises are understood. And the same thing for what we've been discussing. We're trying to establish our identity through proving some of our belief systems rationally. We talked first about Tawheed. We proved the existence of Allah through rational proofs. No Quran, no Hadith, nothing but the intellect. Using science to make sure that science can't disprove what we believe, although we'll see what happens with the Big Bang, right? We have a discussion on that with one of the brothers. But we said the Big Bang doesn't disprove God. In fact, actually even points and does an ishara towards Allah. We talked about this idea of randomization. That doesn't make sense as well. It wasn't rational. Then we ended last night and said, okay, with all of these points about Tawheed, how does it affect our daily life? How do we take these rational understandings of our religion and apply it? We said, if somebody understands La ilaha illallah, right, that there is no ilah, there is no authority, there is no priority, there's nothing else that should be the source of my decision-making, my actions in my life, other than what Allah wants, then that can be something we can apply. You get stuck in that decision-making, area, right? You're stuck between what Allah wants and what you want, right? In that position, if just quickly you can go back through those rational proofs and say, okay, I have no doubt in Allah, rationally I have no reason to deny His existence. Why would I want to follow my own desires when I know this is going to eventually lead to punishment? And for some of us, this idea of being punished, we'll get to that inshallah if we have time. We'll talk about the Day of Judgment, we'll talk about punishments. Today, we're going to start going forward now. Tawheed, well, you can never finish Tawheed, you can never close that chapter. But what we wanted to do was just establish that there is a God, and it's only one God that exists, as we had said last night. So now what can we do going forward? The first question we have is, okay, many of us maybe have heard these proofs before. Maybe you've done the research yourself, you read the books, like you're a master of philosophy. Okay, I already know that God exists, and okay, maybe if you didn't, okay, now God's proven for me. But is that enough for me to hold on to my identity? Is that enough for me to stop sinning? Well, I think the proof is in our lives, right? If we believed in God, really believed in Him, then we would have stopped sinning. But many of us who do believe and have absolute certainty, rational, mathematical, irfani certainty, if you will, we still commit sins. So what's the issue there? That's the first question we have to answer. If you can send a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Just because we believe that a power and authority exists doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to trust that power and authority. Right? We know that there might be somebody who has authority over us, but it doesn't mean we're going to give up what we feel is right to that authority. And what do we mean? Let's give an example here. We know that when we go outside, right, there are laws set up in a state, federal government, whatever, or localities. There's people who have authority to enforce these laws, right? Police officers. They're out there, they enforce the laws. If they break it, they catch us, we get in trouble, right? So now think of the various laws for those of you who drive, when you go out on the road, what do you obey and what do you disobey? Well, let's give the first group examples. So when you're driving at night, most of us, if you're sane, you're going to turn on your lights as you're driving at night, right? If you forget, that's something else. But if you have your intention there, if you have tawajjuh, then you'll turn on your lights because you need to see where you're going. Okay. When it rains, you turn on your windshield wipers, right? There's no doubt about that. Whenever there's a red light, for the most part, we stop at a red light, right? Seatbelt laws. For the most part, most of us, we try to wear our seatbelts, okay? That's one group of laws. Now there's another group. The second group is things like speed limit. At the very least, the majority of drivers don't drive at the speed limit. Maybe 1, 2, some of us go 10, 15, 20. We go over the speed limit. It's not a big deal for us. Or, for example, changing lanes. Maybe you use blinkers, maybe you use your indicator. A lot of people on the road don't. They just switch in and out like wild drivers. So what's the difference between these two groups? So the first group, driving at night, turning on your lights, using your windshield wipers, stopping at a red light, putting on your seatbelt. What's the reason we actually obey these things? It's not because it's a law. Even if these things weren't a law, most of us would still obey this anyway. You'd still stop at a red light. You'd still put on your seatbelt. You'd still put on your lights at night. Right? You'd still put on your windshield wipers when it rains. Why? Because it makes sense to you, because you trust that this law is for your well-being, right? It's going to protect you. Speed limit, using your blinkers or driving while using your cell phone or texting, most of us, our own desires come in the middle. We say, listen, if I go 2, 3, 5 miles over the speed limit, what's the big deal? Nobody's going to get hurt. I'm in control. I know how to drive. It's not going to damage anybody. Using your indicators or blinkers, right? Well, the cars in front of me, the cars are behind me, they're so far away, it's not going to hurt anybody. Let me just switch in and out, right? I can't be bothered to waste all that energy just to flick my finger up, back, and down. Oh, that's too much for me. I can just switch in. Who cares? Or nowadays, right? Both adults and kind of teenagers when they're driving. I can multitask, right? I'm a great multitasker. I can talk on my phone. I can text while driving. It's not a big deal. Although statistics say something different, right? Statistics say it's probably the leading cause of vehicular deaths right now, right, is using your phone while driving. But again, our desires come in, and we think we know ourselves, like, no, nobody's going to get hurt. So this second group, using your phone, breaking the speed limit, using your blinkers, they're laws, but most people just break them. Why? Because they don't actually trust those laws. They don't think that it's for our well-being. We think that, listen, I know what the spirit of the law is. I know that it's out to protect people, so it's okay if I break it. It's not a big deal. And sometimes, nowadays especially, we hear this, right? Especially from some Muslim speakers and scholars. I know the spirit of the law. I know what Islam really wants. I know Islam is just out for general modesty. So now, hijab, well, it doesn't make sense for this day and age, right? Because the spirit of Islam just wants us to be modest. So if I go out with this type of clothing, even if I'm not fully covering up, according to what they did in Arabia, it's not a big deal. Or even more contemporary issues like homosexuality. Well, the spirit of Islam is about love and compassion and tolerance and all of these things. So, that homosexuality law, that was for back then. That was back in those Jahil Arabs. They needed that. We don't need that anymore. Islam has evolved. It's progressed. It's moved forward. Islam is rational. It's free thinking. All these nice little buzzwords. So when we don't trust the law ourselves, when we don't have faith, especially in the one who's created the laws, then it's up to us then to just decide which one enters Islam and which one is just for those barbarians back who lived in those ages. So this is what happens to us. We might believe in God. We might even believe to some extent that there was a Quran, a book sent down. You might even believe that there was a person, back then a prophet, and then imams. But you know what? They were for a different time. I don't trust that what they did was in terms of what we would define as justice. If we had enough faith in our book, we had enough faith in our prophets, our imams, our creator, the one who actually established law for us, our way of life, our deen, our religion, then everything we'd follow it without question, right? Sami'na wa ata'na. I hear, I obey. We hear, we obey. That's it. Sam'an wa ata'an. Whatever you say, Allah, I'm just going to listen to it. I'm going to follow it. But that's not what happens. We don't see a benefit in a law. We don't trust that law. We don't see justice in that law, or even the person who made those laws. Then we're not going to follow it. This is why sometimes, even though we believe that there's God and that there's some rules that He sent down, we still sin. Not because we want to go against Allah necessarily, but we're going against things which we feel might be unjust. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. This is why for some of us, it's natural to go to the next discussion after we've proven God. Well, okay, but is he actually just or not? Or did he, na'udhu billah, just make these random rules for his own benefit and his own purpose? Right? He just made it for, he was bored. He was like, you know what, let me just kun fayakun, I'll make a universe, I'll make some random laws, and whatever these humans do, who cares? So that's what we have to try to establish. If we can establish that he's just, that he has no reason to misguide us, and that he sent individuals that are here to guide us towards perfection, then maybe that'll give us more strength, more willpower, more of a desire and passion to obey what he says. Perhaps it's based on this that we have this one tradition from Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajjil farajahum. Tying into our theme, right? We were saying we're going from Muslim to Mu'min. We want to go from Islam to Iman, right? Somebody who just believes towards somebody who practices what they believe. So over here he has this one narration. He says, Al-Iman ala arba'ati arkan. Iman, true faith, is on 4 pillars. It's resting upon 4 different foundational things. What are these 4 things? First is at-tawakkul ala Allah. First thing that we're talking about right off the bat, tawakkul, having absolute trust in what God says. Second is wa tafweed ila Allah, starting to forfeit what you want and give it up to Allah. The third is wa taslim li amrillah. All of these different, not just the commands that Allah gives, but things that happen in our daily life, you start completely submitting every part of your being to whatever happens in your life. And the last is the highest level. It's what? وَرِضَى بِقَضَاءِ اللَّهِ. Whatever has happened, whatever does happen, and whatever will happen, everything that exists, you don't just say, okay, you know what, Allah decided it, fine. You have riba. You have complete pleasure. You're excited. You're happy with what Allah decides for you. And that's a tough thing to do, right? But as we go forward, maybe tonight, continuing tomorrow night, as we go into this discussion of justice, what we'll try to establish is, one, should we have this kind of trust in Allah? Like, can He do injustice to us? At the end, hopefully, we'll reach a point where it's not just that we believe that God is just, but we'll get to a point that perhaps we'll be happy with whatever happens in our daily lives. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay. Especially during the time of Muharram, this topic, this word, this phrase of justice comes up constantly, right? Those of you who attend different processions, especially the one that happened in Orlando, right? Justice. Imam's message was about justice, right? This is what we want to talk about. There's a lot of different concepts in our lives, especially in kind of the Islamic parlance, right? In our vocabulary, which it sounds nice on paper, but then when you stop and think about it, you're like, okay, we want justice. Like, okay, well, what does that mean? Right? Everybody has their own definition. Especially now, if we want to go and have a conversation with not just non-Shias, not just non-Muslims, but people who are adamant about being an enemy to not just, again, Shias or Muslims in general, or even religion in general. People who are just kind of enemies or unjust themselves, oppressors. Right? If we don't agree on a definition of justice, they might be thinking that oppressing somebody is actually just. Right? So the first thing we have to figure out, okay, what exactly does it mean to be just? What is the concept of justice? So we hear it sometimes in relation to politics. That's probably the most apparent, most ma'ruf and mashhur definition, the most famous one, right? For example, right, we're in Orlando. We've heard justice for Trayvon Martin, right? What happened? You hear about different countries, justice for Palestine, justice for the Muslims in Myanmar, justice for the Shias in Pakistan, justice for those in Kashmir, justice for those in Syria. So in a political context, it exists. In this country, we have justice for minorities like African Americans or Native Americans for what they have to suffer for at the hands of the system over here. But the system here, right, the American government itself, has been trying to inculcate us that this government, this stands for justice, right? For those of you who have memorized the Pledge of Allegiance, right, if you're raised here, with liberty and justice for all. So nobody disagrees that we want justice, right? Okay. But even if you don't want to think about it in terms of politics, even if you think about it in terms of your own daily life, it's not just some high-level adult concept. This is something that is built into every single one of us, in your fitra, right? In your theomorphic nature. A child knows this, right? These children who are running around, they know what justice is. Okay, they might not know that word, but they know when they've been oppressed, right? They know when dhulm, injustice has been done to them. For example, let's say, for example, one night they're serving pizza, right? As they go around and start handing out a slice here, a slice here, a slice here, if one kid comes around and let's say Sayyid Yusuf likes this kid a little bit more than everybody else, he gives him 2 slices. The kid who got just 1 slice will turn and say, that's not fair. Why did he get 2 and I only got 1? And I'm sure Sayyid Yusuf is a man of justice and principles. He would never do something like that. Unless it's me, he can give me 2 slices, that's fine, because I'm the speaker and I get special treatment, but that aside, a kid will say, that's not fair, that's unjust. Why does he get 2 and I get 1? There should be no difference, right? This person hasn't studied deep philosophy. He hasn't read the books of Kant and Descartes or, the Republic by Plato and Socrates. He hasn't entered any discourse. Nobody's told him that, things should be just in your life. They naturally feel that something's happened to them. Okay, you might say, well, that's because the child can speak. But even children, young children, toddlers, you take away their toy and give it to another child in front of them, your parents know what's going to happen there, right? You're lucky if they don't cry, right? They'll put up a fuss. So, why would you do that? That's not fair. And then we try to cover it up by saying, sharing is caring. But is that sharing? If you take away a child's property and give it to somebody else? Something for us to think about. Inshallah, if we do have that session on parenting, we can maybe address something like that there. So everybody has this sense of justice built in, whether it's on the political side or whether it's in our individual lives. Okay, so now what are these different definitions of justice? We're going to go through them one by one and see. Again, we're not bringing in the Quran, we're not going to bring in Hadith. We're just going to say for now, what are the different definitions of justice that other philosophers, other sociologists, other individuals and thinkers and intellectuals, what have they offered? And from a rational, logical perspective, do they make sense? Do they fit with how we feel justice should be defined? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay, so far let's say the tartib, right? The way that we've been going forward, I think it's logical, it makes sense, right? Right? That we need to establish these different definitions, yeah? Okay. So one definition that some scholars, some intellectuals have offered is that justice is whatever makes the most amount of people in a society happy, right? Whatever makes the most amount of people happy, that's defined as justice. So if you've got 100 people in a society, if a certain rule or law or idea makes 51 people happy, then that's it, that's justice. Even if 49 people are not happy with it, that's what's justice. So we'd say, okay, we think about that now. Does that make sense as a definition for justice? Right away, you can think of your own examples. Imagine how many different societies exist right now that, based on, let's say, democracy or a majority vote, have voted in things which clearly now, by our own contemporary 21st century rational lens, we say that was injustice, right? You can easily talk about slavery, right? It was a majority voted thing. The majority of people wanted it, and it was there. You can talk about the wars that have been enacted by various countries. The majority allowed for it. The majority were happy with it. You can talk easily about the Third Reich, right? The Nazi government, the Nazi regime. That was a majority rule. They decided what they wanted to do. The majority of people agreed, and a minority was oppressed because of it, right? So just because that made the majority of people happy, would we define that as justice? No rational thinking person would define that. So that is a definition we can throw away. Okay, second definition that's offered is whatever the law has been established, whether it was by the minority or majority, doesn't matter. If a law is established in a society, however it was, following that law is just, and breaking that law is unjust. Now again, this is probably even worse than the first definition, okay? Again, if there's a law, for example, let's say a law is established that African Americans are not allowed to sit on the front of a bus. So now, when somebody named Rosa Parks goes and sits on the front of the bus in protest, she's a criminal actually, right? She's breaking the law. So in this definition, she's being unjust. She's being an oppressor. Is the law supposed to be our criteria? We've already said that if, even by democratic standards, unjust laws can be set up. So is following that law specifically supposed to be justice? We'd say no, because there's a possibility that the law is unjust, and therefore following that law would be unjust. Even if you want to put it in terms of Muharrum, right, of Karbala. If the governor, if the ruler is Yazid, la'anatullah alayh, and he has a system set up, then would we say that, okay, following his laws of the time was what is justice? No. Certain other schools of thought might say whoever's ruling, that's what you have to do, and that's Islamically correct. We'd say, does that really make sense? You know, take aside your narrations for instance. Just use your brain, use your intellect. You're saying that no matter who runs an Islamic government, you have to follow them? Does this work with your heart? Does that sit with your fitrah? Imagine shaitan possesses a person and then sits on the seat of the caliphate, it becomes the khalifa of an Islamic government. Are you going to say that, well, we know it's shaitan, but what can we do? He's running the Islamic government? No. It can't just be anybody running it. It can't just be any law. It has to be a just law. There has to be a certain criteria and a basis for that. There has to be a good milak for that. So this definition doesn't work as well. Okay, let's go to another one. So when certain intellectuals saw that, okay, these two definitions don't work, we need to take it up a notch, right? It has to be a bit deeper. They say, okay, so it's not just about the law itself, right? There has to be a higher understanding of justice. What is that? One scholar has said that doing whatever is morally right is just, and doing whatever is morally wrong is unjust. Well, that sounds pretty good, right? That sounds like something we might be able to agree with. Okay, but there's a problem here. Who gets to decide what's right and wrong? You can say this is moral, this is according to correct morality, or this is immoral, but who makes that decision? If, for example, there's a vote that says African Americans should get reparations for what they've had to endure, right? Even if they are not connected, they should get reparations for what happened to them. One person says, yes, that's moral because of the oppression that their ancestors had to suffer in this country. Some others might say, no, why do they earn that? These people who live in this generation, they didn't suffer anything. It was their ancestors. So why should we have to pay for that? They might say it's immoral. Native Americans, you can make the same argument, right? Or for example, the Jews who were oppressed all throughout Europe, right, who were then oppressed subsequently in Nazi Germany. What happened? The British had to make up for that. The Europeans who let that happen, they had to make up for it. They said, okay, we'll have to give you some land now so that this doesn't happen again. And I guess they decided that, you know, we can't live with you, so maybe you should have your own nation. And they took the land from Palestinians and put them there. For them, that was the moral decision to do. But in terms of the Palestinians, they said, who said that you can come and take our land and do that? So who makes the decision of whether this is moral or immoral? Even right now, contemporary political decisions. Again, we mentioned homosexuality before. Some might say that, no, we should give them the rights. Well, why can't they get married? What's the big deal? It doesn't harm me. So what's morally right is that since it doesn't harm me, then okay, let them do whatever they want. It doesn't affect my daily life, right? They get married, that's their own private thing. Let the government sanction that, let them get the tax rebates, it's okay, I don't care. But some others will come, more so conservative Christians than anybody else. They say, no, this is not moral. Right? This is an immoral act, and we have to step in and make sure this doesn't happen. Right? And they're cast aside for it. And us as Muslims, we get caught in between because we don't want to look like we're outcasts. We want to look like we're freedom-loving and we're peaceful and we're tolerant. Again, all those buzzwords that we hear in the Western world. We don't want to be against that. We want to be the ones who are loving and all that stuff. But at the same time, we don't want to go against our religion too. We don't want to against what Allah has said. But some will say, well, okay, but this is not an Islamic government, so why do we have to do that? You see how it can get very, very tricky. So what is morally right and wrong? Well, it's going to depend on your criteria. This is why this definition is also not going to completely help us decide what is just. So based on that, we have to toss these definitions aside, and we have to now look towards another one. And this one we're going to find again from Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. So he says, Al-Adl yadu al-umur mawadi'aha. Adl, justice, is putting everything in its rightful place, putting things where they belong. Okay, well, what does that mean exactly? You guys have heard this before, I think. Okay, so you might say, okay, putting everything in its rightful place, that means equality, right? Justice for all means equality for everybody. And a lot of us get those two concepts confused, justice and equality. With just one example, you'll see that justice does not mean equality. So, the first example I gave for, I believe, the first definition, what we had said was, okay, imagine you're giving out food, you're giving out pizza. If anybody were to give a different amount to one individual, you'd say that's unjust, right? Everybody should get an equal amount. Okay, so that's equality. You'd want that. For that example, it works. But let's look at a different example. You stay up all night for an exam, for the bar, for example, or for your medical exams. You stay up for a test. You put in all this effort, you take a Red Bull, pop Adderall, whatever. I'm not encouraging that, but I know what you guys are doing. You do whatever you can, you stay up all night, and you pass this test, right? You get whatever, maybe you get an 85, 90, did a decent job. Your friend, though, doesn't really care. He's like, you know what, whatever, it doesn't really matter what I get. I don't really care about school. Who cares? I'm just going to get a job at McDonald's when I'm older anyway. What do I care? So he doesn't study. He comes and takes the same test. He gets it back. He gets an 85. You're like, how the heck did you do that? How did you get the same grade as me? You take a look, and your answers are different. Like, hold on. You put the wrong answers there, and you still got the same grade? You go to your professor. You go to your teacher. How did this happen? It's like, well, I don't want to be unjust to anybody. I have to be equal with everybody. So I gave everybody in the class the same grade. Like, well, that doesn't make any sense. I put in a certain amount of effort, and this person, okay, it might be my friend, but they didn't put the same effort as me. I killed myself studying, right? I messed up everything just so I can get a passing grade. And this person who did nothing, who put the wrong answers on there, they get the same grade as me? That's not fair. That's unjust. So equality doesn't always mean justice. Think about right now, right? In terms of, for example, the way that we understand economic, let's say justice or social equality here in this country. Some take it to the extreme and say, well, it's got to be socialism. Everybody needs to get the exact same amount, or we would call that probably communism, right? And some say that's what the Islamic model should be. Everybody should get the exact same amount. Well, that doesn't make sense. If somebody's going to spend 10, 20, 30 years researching something and working for a job which requires their effort, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, they deserve a specific amount of money, right, for the effort they put in. Whereas somebody who, let's say, their job doesn't require that much mental effort or physical effort, they shouldn't be getting the same amount of money. To us, that would seem unjust. If two people, given two different backgrounds, intellectual, educational, whatever backgrounds, again, we're not saying one's better or worse. We're just saying one has more effort, one requires more blood, sweat, and tears, the other one not so much. So should they both get the same amount? You would say that's not fair as well. Right? So equality doesn't necessarily mean justice, and justice doesn't necessarily mean equality. So based on this understanding that justice means treating things according to what they deserve, putting things where they belong, how are we supposed to understand that in an Islamic context? How do we say that, okay, Allah, does He put everything where it belongs? Or rather, another way of looking at it. Can Allah put something where it doesn't belong? Can He actually do injustice to us? Can He take something that rightfully belongs in one place and give it to someone else? This is the question we'll try to answer. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. What causes somebody to perform or do or perpetrate injustice in the first place? What makes somebody an oppressor? Some of our ulama have written on this. Ayatollah Nasir Mukarram Shirazi, hafadhahullah, may Allah protect him and all of our ulama and our marajih. He breaks down 4 reasons. He said these 4 reasons are the reasons why somebody would want to oppress. These are the causes. The first, he says, is ignorance. Right? If you don't know what you're doing, you might unintentionally oppress somebody. Right? So for example, let's say after the program, we're all sitting in the dining rooms, the dining halls. You have your cup of chai, the person has their cup of chai, and you're drinking it. You accidentally just turn your head for a second, your attention goes somewhere else. You grab their cup of chai, you take a sip. Right? It didn't belong to you. You did something accidentally, but you did oppress them, right? That wasn't yours. You took something that didn't belong to you. But it was an accidental thing because you weren't paying attention. You were ignorant of that, right? That's it. So that's one reason you might do injustice. The second reason is if you have some sort of need. There's a need for you that you have in your life. In order to fulfill that need, because you can't do it yourself, you're going to have to go and take it from someone else. So in the same example, you come, maybe you were sitting here doing ibadat or whatever, so you come a bit late too, after the food's being served. You come in, you see all the food is done. You see all the chai's finished. You're like, okay, great. Oh, I had a rough day, I'm really hungry, and this person already ate a lot. They don't deserve that food. So as a person just not paying attention, you just take a little bite from them, you take a little sip for their chai. You know what you're doing, but you feel like you deserve it, right? You had a need, you wanted to quench your thirst, you needed that caffeine fix, you needed to get rid of that hunger. So you took a little bit, like, it's not a big deal, they won't mind. I have a need that they really didn't, so I take a little bit of theirs, what's the big deal? This is the second reason. You have a need, and you go and take from someone else. Third reason is if you don't have an ability to not be just. You don't have the power to prevent yourself from doing dhulm and oppression to somebody. And where would that happen? A good, perhaps, example would be in a relationship between parents and adults. Parents and their children. Sometimes phone rings, Your child picks it up and says, oh, so-and-so is on the phone. And what do you tell them? Tell them I'm not home, right? You don't feel like talking to them. Now that child, because of the authority position that you have, is going to say, oh, sorry, my dad's not home. You've made them sin, right? You've made them oppress themselves. They shouldn't have lied, but you're now teaching them a lie. You're saying, yeah, go ahead, tell them I'm not home. So this is a way because the child has no other way. Some have also attributed that, listen, the soldiers who were in these armies, right, they have no other choice, right? Because they're forced out of a need for survival, right? Some even say that the reason that soldiers join oppressive armies, the reason that some Muslims are joining Daesh or the Taliban or Al-Qaeda or all these groups is because they need food, they need money, and these groups are offering them that. Forgetting the ones who are ideologically, supportive of that. Those, they're worse than animals. That's different. We're talking about those who, because of, I don't like calling it Saudi, but that money that's those takfiri money, which is being funded and comes into many different countries, where they build up these schools, they train them in this way, and those families get, here, send your kid to that school, we'll give you $500, we'll give you $1,000. Some who have never seen a piece of bread in their lives are getting all this money. And they can't say no, because they need that to survive. So because of that, now they're on a path to oppression. Now think about what might happen to us if we were in this position where we're not doing so well economically. The economic status in this country has gone down. And there's a job available with a certain company, which we know is an oppressive company or supports oppression overseas. We say, I got to feed my family. I have to do what I have to do. I have no other choice. Then indirectly you might have to support oppression because of that. So because you have this inability to survive on your own, you need to now oppress. This is the third reason. And the fourth one is more of an emotional reason. It's selfishness. You go out on your own because of an emotional desire. Whether you have a grudge against somebody, you want to seek revenge, so you go and you oppress somebody. So for example, let's say you were the person, you were sitting at that table, and the guy next to you was the one who drank your chai. The auntie next to you took that last samosa from you. And you notice that. You're like, oh, okay, fine. All right, we'll see what happens tomorrow. So when they come tomorrow, as you're sitting there online, you see that there's only one samosa left, or two samosas left. There's a little bit of chai. So you take both of them, you take all the chai, like, you know what, fine, that's the way it's going to be, then we'll see what happens. When they sit down, if they have the food, you take a little bit of theirs, right? You ruin their life. Why? Because they ruin yours. So you go after them. You know it's oppression, but you feel like, I have to take care of myself, right? They'll see who I really am, right? I'll show them, that kind of idea. Really, really, this is real Shia thinking nowadays, huh? Okay. So these are the four reasons. Ignorance, need, inability, or selfishness, revenge. So now all we have to do is take these reasons and see, do they apply to God, our definition of God, or not? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay. Ignorance. Okay, if Allah is all knowledgeable, He's not ignorant of anything. So there's no way He can accidentally oppress somebody. That one's gone. Need. Okay, He's the one who actually gave us existence. What does He actually need? We're the ones actually in need. If He's giving everything, there's no need for Him to do anything. Okay, that's gone. Inability. Okay, if He's completely powerful, again, there's nothing that He lacks that He can take from us, that He needs from us. So that one's gone too. And again, selfishness, or this desire of revenge. Well, there's no way we can actually harm Him and do anything to Him. If He's the one who's constantly sustaining us out of His own mercy and kindness, our existence is completely based on the fact that we never asked for it, right? He's the one who just gave it to us out of His own love and kindness. What revenge is there? We can't harm Him, and everything so far that's been given to us is for our own benefit. So there's no ignorance, there's no need, there's no inability, and there's no selfishness. Any reason you can try to contemplate and pontificate and think about, it doesn't apply to Allah and given His characteristics. His sifat show that injustice cannot be a part of His existence. It can't be a part of His dhat, His nature. It's completely outside of this. And when you look out in the world, that's exactly what you see. But now you might respond and say, well, but that's not what I see. When I look out in the world, I see oppression taking place. I see injustice taking place. If I was God, I wouldn't allow any of this to happen. So now you might say theoretically, okay, all this is correct, and maybe God rationally shouldn't be unjust, but now I see Him being unjust, sorry. I see injustice in the world. So how do I reconcile that? When I see people being punished, when I see a hurricane happen like this, and innocent women and children, and people who are poor, and all this going on in the world, How do I reconcile that with my deen? How can I go and tell an atheist who says, your God is evil, I'll never believe in him? How do I tell him that, no, he's not evil, it's just, you have to have faith. Is that enough? Or do we have to have a deeper, more philosophical answer? That'll be the question we answer tomorrow night. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So as we were saying, as we go forward in these lectures, every point will try to establish and strengthen every previous night's points. We said that one of the reasons we are not going to fulfill our identity and establish our identity is because of a lack of faith in that God that we have now rationally proven. So we've showed tonight that it doesn't seem as though there's a reason for God to be unjust. But now we're seeing injustice in the world. That's our next step. We have to see, how do we reconcile this with rational proofs and beliefs that this is the reason why justice takes place, why injustice, or what we say is injustice, takes place in this world. When a strong identity, as we said last night, is established in a household, when parents instill in their children a Muslim identity, a proper Shia identity, a proper monotheistic and Tawheedi identity, those children grow up and start manifesting this idea of La ilaha illallah. For them, the only authority in their lives is Allah. Right? Their desires go out the door. We saw last night how the children of Zainab, An, and Muhammad, how they were able to do this. Young children were able to manifest Tawheed on that battlefield, despite their young age, despite their weakness. And in that same line, we continue tonight and commemorate the Shahada of another youth who was a bit older than them and had a very special relationship with Imam Hussein, his nephew, Qasim ibn al-Hasan, alayhi salam. They say on that night of Ashura, when the Imam gathered all these companions, and he told them that tomorrow all of you will give your lives, and all of you, every single one of you, will become shaheed, and you'll give your lives for the sake of Islam. None of you will survive. They say, according to some narrations, that Qasim came running to Imam Hussein. He said, Ya Amma, wa ana mimman yuqtil ghada? Will I be somebody who's killed tomorrow too? Am I going to be among them? Now, it would have been very easy for Imam to ask and to, give this idea of, yes, absolutely. But of course, Imam, he gives us a lesson. He wants to see, what is Qasim's ma'arifah? What is his level? And now we have to understand, Qasim is not asking because he's afraid. He's not afraid of death. And this is what Imam wants to show us, that he wasn't afraid of death. So he asks him, Ya Qasim, kayfa al-mawt 'indak? What do you think about death? What is your idea of death? How do you feel about it? He says those famous lines, Ahla min al-asr. It's sweeter to me than honey. Can you imagine anybody, us, when we were teenagers, offering an answer like this? Can we imagine our children, based on the way we've raised them right now, 13 years old, 14 years old, saying that death to me is something sweet, that I welcome it? This is how Qasim was raised. But Qasim he didn't understand fully, so he said, tell me, will I be martyred or not? Will I be with you or not? And Hussein, with his soft heart, with tears in his eyes, he says, Ya Qasim, even my Aliul Asghar will be martyred tomorrow. At which point Qasim said, he was surprised. He said, Ya Amma, will the enemies actually come into our tents to kill my cousin Aliul Asghar? Is this what's going to happen? And Hussein says, no, Qasim, I'll take him myself out onto the desert of Karbala, and they're going to shoot an arrow into his throat. This is how he'll go. And they say Qasim, according to some narrations, this is the reason why on the night of Ashura he was crying. Because of this. Because he knew that his cousin was going to die in such a horrific way. But Hussein had to hold things back from him. Hussein didn't give him all the information. Imagine if Hussein had to say, no, Qasim, they're not going to come inside for Asghar, but they will come inside for Imam Sajjad. They will come inside for the women. They will come inside and pull the earrings from your cousin Sakina. This is what they will do. They'll burn the tents, Qasim. On the day of Ashura, one by one, as everybody kept coming forward and getting permission from Imam to go out onto the battlefield, Qasim also joined. He came out, and he asked for permission as well. But just like An and Muhammad were initially denied, he was also initially denied. And at this point, they say, after asking so much for ijazah, he said, please, my uncle, give me ijazah. At one point, the narrations say the Qasim fell down to the feet of his uncle Hussein and began kissing his feet. Said, please, please. He kissed his hands, said, let me go out, let me fight for you, let me go for jihad. Imam denies him. Qasim's heart's broken, he's devastated. And any child knows, and any mother knows, that when a child has a broken heart, when they've been denied something, they go straight away to their mother. They go right away and they ask their mother to fulfill their desires. Qasim runs to Farwa, complaining that my uncle won't let me go. He won't let me go out to battle. Now, imagine the position that Farwa was in. She said, I know that On and Muhammad were allowed to go. When they were refused position, it was Zainab who went forward and took permission from her brother. But that was Zainab and Hussein. These are siblings. What relationship do I have with Hussein to ask him for something like this? So this is when they say Farwa was confused. She had no idea what to do. But this is when she remembered that my husband, my dear late husband Hassan, had left me something specifically for this time. He had said, when you come into hardship, when you'll be confused, then open this chest up and there'll be 2 letters. Take those letters out and this will solve your problem. When she opens that chest and she sees these 2 letters, according to some narrations, one she sees was addressed to Imam Hussein, the other was addressed for her and for Qasim. When they open it up, they begin to read together, mother and son. It says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, addressing Qasim, Ya Bunayya. Imam Hassan is addressing his son Qasim. I won't be able to defend my brother at Karbala. There will be a day when he'll be threatened, and I won't be there for him. Ya Qasim, Ya Bunayya, you'll be my wakil, you'll be my representative of Karbala. When your uncle will be surrounded on all sides by the enemies, you need to sacrifice yourself on my behalf for your uncle, for my brother. When Qasim sees this, he's filled with tears of joy. So he says, now I have this permission. He grabs that letter addressed for the Imam, addressed for Imam Hussein. He runs as fast as he can. He gives this letter to the Imam. And you know, when Imam sees this letter, when he sees it, he opens. He doesn't need to see who it's from. When he sees that writing, he knows it's from his brother. He begins crying right away. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ya akhi, ya Hussein. Don't stop my Qasim from fighting for you on this day. When you remember, La yawmaka yawmaka ya Aba Abdullah, on that day, my Qasim will be there for you. Don't deny him for this. I'm leaving my Qasim for you. When Hussein finishes reading the letter, now nephew and uncle are crying together. Qasim and Hussein begin hugging each other, and they say, according to one narration, that they cried so intensely together that they both collapsed and fainted from this. When they woke up, Hussein told Qasim, now, because of this, you have ijazah from me. Do you know why, mu'mineen? This was not a letter from an older brother to a younger brother. This is a letter from an imam to his follower. This is Hussein's imam giving him a letter. Finally, Farwa takes Qasim around to all the women, giving their wida, saying Khudafis and salam for the last time. When they take him back to Hussein and Abbas, in the same way that Awn and Muhammad were trained by Hussein and Abbas at the last second, Hussein now began to get Qasim ready for battle. They say that he didn't have clothes that were meant for battle. So what they did is, Hussein took some cloth and he tore it into 2 pieces. He took one piece and wrapped it like an imama, like a turban around the head of Qasim. And he took the other one and used it to cover the chest of Qasim. It's almost as if Hussein knew what was going to happen to Qasim. And we would say, Ya Hussein, Qasim hasn't gone out for battle yet, but you're already wrapping a kafan around him. Just like his cousins Awn and Muhammad. They say he couldn't get on the horse by himself, so Hussein had to place him on his saddle. As he began to ride out, his mother Farwa calls out and watches him, Ya Qasim, go and fight for your uncle, go and fight for Islam. When Qasim reaches, the enemies see something like the moon coming towards them. They said, what is this beautiful child coming to? Who is this? What is this? It's like the moon, like the full moon. And they say that they were blinded by this. So some of the soldiers said, how can we kill such a beautiful child? But because we know of the hate that they had in their hearts, when that identity crisis came, they chose the wrong path. They would go forward and fight Qasim. One after another, Qasim, who was the son of Hassan, who was the grandson of Hussein, who was the grandson of Ali, fought little by little, destroying the enemies one by one. But unfortunately, because of his weakness, because of his age, finally the enemies overtook him. One mal'oon from the army says, I will definitely kill Qasim, and I'm going to hit this young boy so hard, I will hit him so hard that even Hussein in his camp will feel the pain. This cowardly man comes from Qasim, from behind. When Qasim saw that the strap of his sandal had been undone, as he bends down and tries to fix this enemy takes a giant heavy iron rod and he hits Qasim so hard that they say his spine broke right away from the strike. When Qasim fell down on the sands of Karbala in pain, he began crying for Hussein. Ya Amma adrikni, Ya Amma adrikni. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, azadaran, when every other person had fallen down on those sands, they say that they cried out once to Imam. They said, Ya Hussein, Ya Aba Abdullah, Assalamu alayka, Ya Aba Abdullah. They would cry once, and Hussein and Abbas would come running towards them and take care of them. But according to some narrations, when Qasim fell, they say he cried over and over and over again, Ya Amma, Ya Amma. But every time he cried, his voice got weaker and weaker and weaker. Ya Amma, Ya Amma. Do you know why? You know why this happened. They say when Qasim fell, the horses in this frenzy began trampling his body over and over again. As his bones began to break over and over again, his voice became weaker. على لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره. Ya Allah, we ask you by the right of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad to forgive all mu'mineen, mu'minat, muslimin, muslimat. Over marhumin, marhumat, we ask you by the right of Qasim ibn al-Hasan to give us as parents the ability to instill a proper identity in our households so that we can raise someone like this Qasim. For us who have nephews and nieces, so we can build this relationship the same way Hussein had this relationship with Qasim. And we ask you, Allah, the same way that Imam Hassan was able to give his nephew away for the cause of his future Imam, that those of us, if we won't be around, that our children, our nephews, our nieces, our cousins, everyone in our family, we help them grow as our family together so that we can support and help the Imam. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, brothers, please come closer. Ya Hussein, closer. Ya Hussein, closer. Ya Hussein.